do just have a couple items, both of which are under new business. We have a resolution to authorize a memorandum of agreement with the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice. This is to provide detention services for juveniles who are charged with committing a crime. This is an annual agreement that they ask that that we sign, that all municipalities sign. And it essentially says that any youth that are transferred to their facility, we are responsible for paying for the costs of their incarceration or any of the time while they're there. This is, I believe, the same agreement, the exact same agreement that we entered into last year. And we do budget about $3,700 is what we budgeted this year for juvenile detention. So it is also part of our budget.
Rachel, do we have, I hate to ask this, do we have many that we have to pay for each year or not?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I know Chief is on the call. Chief Thomas, if you can weigh in on that. You're muted if you're trying to talk.
How about that, Rachel? Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. It's a great question, Ms. Pat. There's very small numbers that we take to DJJ. And I think one of the things you need to understand, these are kids that are have committed violent crimes. So we have very few of those. What we try to encourage is a promissory note with their parents so that they know that they're charged with an offense, which is not a violent offense. We keep them here, or we keep them housed at home. So very few of them actually go to DJJ, but we have to have that annual agreement in place in the event there is a violent crime committed.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad. That's good news.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Chief Thomas.
Yes, sir.
How long does it take an officer to travel back and forth with the juvenile to the detention center in Columbia? 3 hours overall?
And that's on a good day, Mr. Brooks, because of the traffic and the fact that, you know, there's some paperwork when we get there, and a juvenile is a little bit different than an adult. So at best, yeah, I'd say 3 hours, Bob, to go there, do the paperwork and get back. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon, there was a question about that tonight. What was that? Do you have it up? I can't find mine.
I have it. I was prepared to read it during the citizen comment times at the regular meeting. You want me to go ahead and read it now?
Well, the gist of it anyhow.
It was very simply, do we currently use a juvenile detention center in Aiken for the county? And if so, isn't that sufficient? And that was submitted by Daryl Gilliland.
Anybody got an answer to
I do, Mr. Mayor, if you want me to answer it.
that? Sure.
Okay. You know, again, I alluded to earlier, Aiken County, and I talked to Sharon this morning, doesn't have a per se holding facility. There may be a room that they can detain them in, but we can't house juveniles because they're protected under the law. So DJJ would have to house all children, or I say children, juveniles that are charged with violent crimes. So we couldn't keep them in Aiken County if we wanted to. So those are the arrests that are made that are violent crimes. The majority of them, we do the promissory notes to parents. If it's a city charge, if it's a general sessions case, we'll even go and work with family courts to try to keep them here, as opposed to trying to take them to anywhere other than back to the families they need to belong to, which in fact works out for us. There's very small numbers.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So is the only location, as Bob Brooks hinted at, in Columbia?
That's correct. Pleasure. There's the juvenile justice, obviously, and you've probably seen some of those of those stories. They are housed down there, and there's a lot of them. So it's a very delicate situation because there's so many juveniles who commit those violent crimes. So we have to be careful about mixing those nonviolent crimes with violent crimes as far as kids go.
I got you. But there's only one state location or
That's correct. That's right.
Thank you.
So one location in the state, is that what
That's where the Department of Juvenile Justice houses all their juveniles. That's correct.
oh, okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Thanks, everyone. Good discussion. The next item on the agenda is receipt of information from Planning and Development Department. Again, just receipt of information only. The Planning Commission recently met and made a recommendation regarding supplemental use regulations for home occupations. Let me skip to that here. So you have in your packet the staff report and suggested change to the development code. The city has received recently a number of requests for what we're calling cottage kitchens, which is essentially home occupation of preparation of food. And the development code, while it does not, it simply says that food handling is prohibited as a home occupation. There's no other definition for food handling, processing, catering, etc. So folks that would like to apply for home occupation, anything related to food handling, we would automatically have to deny it because it's prohibited. So because of these recent requests and the increase in the commonality for such a type of business, the Planning Commission reviewed an update that does allow for preparation of ready for consumption meals or specialty foods specifically prepared for fresh delivery or catering or consumption at another location, provided that any and all required state health and restaurant approvals and licenses have been obtained. So the Planning Commission voted unanimously to pass this amendment to the ordinance. And we do have Libby on the meeting tonight, I believe. She may be on the telephone. If anyone has any questions specific, there she is, found her.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, we anticipate this being on the next council agenda. Is that correct? For approval?
Yes.
Okay.
And I presume that these people have realized, probably they have been, I know on Facebook there, and some of them are friends of mine, that they've been, prepared dishes and you buy and bring them to your home. Is that the type people we're talking about, Rachel?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So I presume these people know this, the ones that have applied.
Yes, we've been back in contact with the applicants that we've had to previously deny for these uses.
Okay. So they know it's coming back up, maybe.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I sort of often wondered about that myself. How you sort of would do that, prepare food out of your home and then turn around and sell it. I mean, I'm glad. I think it's something nice, but I've sort of wondered how that was operated there.
Does that also come with them having to get business licenses and things like that, or how's that work?
Say that one more time.
I said, does that also come with having to get some business licenses? Is there anything like that, or how does that work?
Yes, so this would be treated like any other home occupation that you need to come and get your business license, and we would double check that you've applied and have been approved by state DHEC to have a cottage kitchen.
Okay. I had a few people ask me about this probably about 8 months ago, but
Yeah.
Given the
And that's part of what
now, I think that's something people are trying to do.
So if I feel like if you get one application, that's one thing, but when you start getting 2 and 3 and 4, that's something that we needed to look at. So.
So what are people doing now? I guess maybe I'm misunderstood because I've seen what appears to be a lot of this going on already. Are they doing it contrary to the rules, or are they having to go to a restaurant? Because I've heard some people talk about, renting space out of a restaurant's kitchen and that kind of thing. But I think we know of several businesses that I know at least your pickup location is at their home. Whether they cook it at their home, I'm not quite sure.
That would be my assumption. So, but this would hopefully fix that.
Okay.
Libby, does the cottage kitchen require commercial stoves and refrigerators or ordinary home appliances?
I think generally under the state's rules, it would be normal appliances. There will be restrictions on how much you can cook and what types of items that you can cook. So there are some restrictions on that end.
I noted one thing was that it did require a separate hand washing area separate from where food is rinsed or prepared for cooking. I did see that somewhere, I believe. Okay, thank you.
That's
and Libby, I'm sorry. Libby, those requirements are DHEC requirements, so I would say we don't enforce those. Those would be enforced by DHEC.
correct.
Okay, so. Okay, I hear you. I mulled that over for a while.
So can I ask this question? Let's just say that Fletcher Dickert decides he wants to cook out of my house, and what's that process look like? If I want to start baking goods or what have you, I first have to go to DHEC, or it's, talk to me about how that process goes, if you don't mind.
Generally, we're going to have some sort of verification before you get your business license. I realize that DHEC often requires a zoning approval before they will look at your application for your cottage kitchen. So we understand that, and we would make the approval of the home occupation contingent on verifying DHEC approval prior to getting your business license. So it's just like any other home occupation that we do. You'd come up to see us, you fill out, the one page that you've got to do, or you go online and fill it out and send it to us. We give you a conditional approval, and then we send you off to, if you need to do construction in your house, you need to go to building standards. If you need, you'll need a business license, and you'll need to go see finance, Cammie's folks.
It sounds like, based on the comment you just made, we may be chasing our tails on having to give conditional approvals and then follow up to verify that they got it. That's what comes first, the chicken or the egg, it sounds like, as far as DHEC approval or zoning compliance.
Yeah, this is not uncommon. So this is what we have to do a lot in order to get people kind of off the ground with anything that requires DHEC approvals.
Okay.
So, Olivia, I hear you saying that they require DHEC approvals. That's different than complying with DHEC rules. I mean, they physically actually need an approval from DHEC to do this. Or is it just they need to comply with DHEC requirements?
I think it's implied with getting DHEC approval is that you would have to be inspected and have the approval just like any other. It wouldn't be as intensive as a restaurant approval, but it is still, they will come and inspect and look. But that's DHEC's inspection.
Well, I get it, but it follows, I think, closely what Fletcher was asking is what's the process? And so it's a little bit more complicated than just coming to us. It's getting approval from DHEC and then coming to us, I guess. Okay, I don't mean to belabor it, but.
Well, we always recommend that people go and talk to DHEC before they endeavor to get some sort of approval from us as well. You need to know what you're in for, but that's on the business owner. That they need to be aware of their requirements.
And you know, just so they're aware, there might also be a subdivision restrictive covenant situation also. And they can have permits from us and permits from DHEC, but if it violates restrictive covenants of the subdivision, they still would not be able to do it.
Well, I guess it's sort of too like in a daycare that's, you know, they serve lunch. I mean, I'm sort of back to Bob's question. And then what Fletcher's saying, it almost sounds like DHEC is the beginning of it. And then us. I mean, because like I said, if we gave them their license, but then DHEC turned them down. So.
And that, we have had situations where I've had to issue a letter saying, you know, if DHEC approves this, it is approvable by the city. It's just a reassurance. And it happens very often.
Yeah.
It works out.
Well, Libby, these ladies who are doing, I mean, like I said, it's on Facebook. You see it all, and it's North Augusta residents. Are we telling them just to hold it, you know, till this gets passed? I mean, are they going to continue doing what they're doing?
Well, our hope is that they would voluntarily come in and comply.
Okay.
I don't really necessarily have any questions, but I think it's a good direction for us to be moving. You know, I think where it makes sense, we should be making it easier for folks to do these sorts of things where it makes sense. And this to me makes a whole lot of sense. I think as everybody's mentioned, there's a significant portion of people that are that are doing this anyway, sort of under the radar. And I have a hard time seeing why we should stand in the way of doing that. So I think it's a good recommendation by the Planning Commission and one that I would certainly support.
No, I support it too, Kevin. I mean, I'm not against it, but I just want us to, I don't want people to go spend a lot of money and then all of a sudden get roadblocked. No, I'm for it, and I think it's a great thing. And I don't know if any of you know the lady who makes the best cakes at Barbecue Barn. She did this, I think, for years, sold cakes out of her home. Now, of course, they're not city limits where she lived, but now she's makes them, I think, Barbecue Barn, which she is a delicious cake maker. But I'm for it. I'm like you, Kevin. I support the motion. I mean, the acceptance.
I just have a perverse sense of humor on this one. If somebody's going to get turned down, and the rumor's going to be that the city wouldn't approve a cottage kitchen unless you had a fireplace inside, it'd be just the reverse of Cracker Barrels.
That's right. We got to have a fireplace now.
Well, those are the only two items that we have on the agenda tonight. Like I mentioned, the cottage kitchen item is just for information only. So there won't be a vote tonight. Thank you, Libby. I appreciate your work. The next item on the study session is a 2021 budget council discussion, an opportunity for you all on council to discuss preliminary municipal budget, talking about that you'd like to see, discussion of projected revenues, etc.
Yeah, I want to.
Can I go ahead, Pat? Can I jump in to set the stage first?
Go
Or-
ahead. I'm okay. No
Are
problem.
you back to the other one, or are you talking about, you waiting to talk about the budget?
No, this is regarding the budget. Matter of fact,
Okay.
had 2 calls today, and I referred one to you, Rachel. I don't know if you talked to Miss Pam Stickler. She says she normally gets a letter or some kind of an application from Todd regarding the wrecking crew, and she has not got that. But I told her to call you today because we're working on budget items. And then number 2, Lavinia Matthews, and I did refer her to Rick, but maybe you might be the wrong person. She is making a new request for the city budget, in our different groups that request money from the city. So I asked her to call Rick because it went more along with Park and Recreation. That's why I told her Rick. So I don't know, Rachel, if you got to talk with Miss Stickler today or not. But expect those calls.
Ms. Carpenter, I spoke with Ms. Stickler today. Her
Okay.
letter had been mailed and she had not checked her post office box. But in the meantime, I went ahead and sent her an electronic copy, so she got her information today.
Okay, good. And now the other young lady, do I need Sharon then to give you her? She is going to be a new request this year. A lot of times we have the same request year after year, but this is a new request.
I believe
do I
so.
just refer her to you or Rachel?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, I'll call her back tonight. Thank you. That's all.
He represents a nonprofit. Yes.
Okay. We're just starting, or the budget process is just started. I don't think if I remember from my discussions today that the directors have gotten their budget requests submitted yet. But with COVID-19 and the impacts, I thought it would be beneficial early in the process to have Cammie and Rachel available Cammie to do a presentation, Rachel to help us with any questions, just to give you an idea about where we are in terms of revenue, what impact that may be on expenditures for the coming year. And so I also sent out the email asking for projects that you're interested or items to get in the budget request or the budget for next year. But Cammie, are you ready to give an overview of where we are and what you're projecting and some of the basis for your projections?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just looking big picture, as we previously talked, 2020, we found that we needed to do a budget adjustment at mid-year due to some impacts from COVID-19. And we really were fortunate in being able to do the budget adjustment, have our budget balanced, able to maintain employees, et cetera. Moving into 2021, it's a little bit different story. We'll see more impacts in 2021 than we've seen in 2020. I'll just hit the main categories of revenue funds, revenue sources that are in the general fund. I think, our enterprise funds are not impacted by the pandemic, but our general fund is more so. Not expecting a dip in property taxes at all. Went and looked at some historical data. On average, we're around 3% growth. I've plugged that number in for now. We typically don't receive our final digest till late August, mid to late August. So more finite numbers will come from that. I have plugged in 3% as a placeholder. That's about 7.7 million if you're looking at numbers wise for the general fund. Licenses and permits. This is where we have several things going on in that revenue source for 2021. You're aware of the state conversations with the chambers of commerce related to business licensing and that bill that's been floating through. We need to update our business license ordinance to be in compliance with the model ordinance from the Municipal Association. Our business license ordinance was put into effect, it appears, in 2005, and rates and classes have not been adjusted as new releases have come out, and we need to update those with our budget process this year. To do the model ordinance and adjust the rate classes, it will result in approximately $50,000 shortfall in business license. If you're comparing just to the current year, it would be $50,000 less. Would recommend that we get updated with the model ordinance, and also in line with that, we have done rate analysis from comparable cities, so close cities that are around us, as well as those of similar population and budget size, and found our rates have not been adjusted since 2005, and we are on the very low end of business license rates. Keeping business friendly in mind, I would recommend a increase to the base of $5 per license. So instead of a $25 base rate, it would be a $30 base rate, and it would just fluctuate based on category. Also would recommend a 10-cent per $1,000 increase on any revenues over the first $2,000. That is the way our current rate structure is set up. So not a new calculation, just an increase to the rate being charged. Our businesses are familiar with the calculation. Can get you some examples later on of what it would look like for impact. A type of business would not release specific business information as that is protected, but could give you some examples of what that proposed rate increase would look like for some sample businesses. Also looking at projections, we just received a sales tax check in September, and it is down 15% from the previous collection. Spoken with some other cities that are on a calendar year like us, looking at 2021 license collections. They're also looking at 15% decrease on their licenses. I think that's a fair, reasonable estimate for us to undertake at this time. We've seen hospitality taxes at a 15% decrease for both May and June collections. So I think that number is of 15% is popping up in various circumstances. We don't have exact reports to show that. So just from estimate standpoint, we're using all the data that we have available to project. And so a 15% decrease to the finance side of business licensing, not necessarily the construction side of business licensing. So estimate for licenses and permits in total is 5.7 million, just talking big picture numbers. I have, for now, have kept fines and forfeitures the same as the 2020 adopted budget. So 1.1 million fines and forfeitures, other sources, including revenues from the state, 751,000. The next big category that I've taken a look at, have some recommendations. This is a different budgeting technique than what we've previously done. That is related to service charges. The revenues in there are primarily from recreation and rentals. So that is where, if you recall, our budget adjustment got impacted the most due to not being able to gather in public or have limited numbers that can gather in public. So the approach that I've currently taken right now, looking at service charges, has been to have most of those streams be non-income producing. So that would mean income equals expense for each type of recreational program. Example would be baseball revenue. If we think we're going to have to spend $30,000 for our baseball program, we would estimate our baseball revenue at $30,000. And that's a very conservative method, so that if we were to not be able to have our baseball program, the expense and the revenue come out, no other impacts to the general fund. There's so many unknowns right now with the pandemic that it's hard to estimate which activities that we're going to be able to have all year. We can certainly look at what we're able to have in the spring successfully, adjust the budget at any point after that. If those activities do produce income, that's great. It's not a loss for the city, but to start our expectations with a no income producing activity, to be conservative. And the other streams I have left relatively the same, and that is the miscellaneous revenue stream and the transfers stream. That hits big picture revenue. If there's other details, I think I covered most of the highlights for you guys.
Look, Tammy, can I make a couple of comments? One of the premises for Cammie's preparation of the budget, and particularly of Parks and Rec, is that the restrictions on group assemblies of people is going to remain in place for the entire year. Basketball is obviously one of our big revenue generators with the Peach Jam. It's a fall sport, so it's really not fall and winter sport, I guess, more winter. It's not really far away, and the trend is that things are getting tighter again, not looser. So kind of like Cammie always picks a dollar value for the price of gas for a year, she's making the basic assumption that for planning purposes, we'll not be able to have large groups for sporting events. And if basketball can't happen nationwide in its normal season, then it's likely that the Peach Jam will have no teams ranked to bring in for the tournament. So that's one of the big things I think that's going to impact our revenues. That's 120, roughly 120,000 with the with the tournaments for the year. So that's over $1 million right there. And of course, if we don't do that, then that's a huge risk that we're building into the budget process right up front. And I don't think Rachel and Cammie are in any way comfortable with doing that at this point in time with so many uncertainties. So basically, the bottom line is, in most of the retail things, as Cammie indicated, we're looking at a 15% downturn. And that's going to impact our revenues, I guess, basically 15% as well. And then you kind of sped by the hospitality tax impact. Am I correct? Well, can you talk in terms of dollar value, what you think we're likely to project down? You or Rachel, either one of you. I mean, I thought you said today that we were likely projecting down 350,000.
So if you're looking at a 15% decrease compared to the prior year, just for those 2 months. So I've only looked at May and June collections for right now. It averages out to about $25,000 a month. So if you think that trend were to continue, times that by 12, it's around $300,000.
And that's pretty close to 25% of our projected revenue, right?
Yes, in the Riverfront Central Core Fund.
Okay. So you're projecting basically, help me, a flat line budget for next year in terms of revenues and expenditures at this point?
As of right now in the budget process, yes, we're looking at a flat budget change, some fluctuations between the big categories, as I mentioned. But yes, an overall flat in line with the adjusted budget. So not the original 2020 proposed adjustment pre-COVID, but the adjusted after COVID began budget. And the directors are still working on their requests, so I have not seen their operational requests. Those are not due for another few days, so we will start working through those. This is early in the process, but wanted to give you some big picture estimates at what we're currently looking at as it impacts the general fund.
Okay, thank you. Questions?
So I guess, Mayor, I know we talked about the peach jam during basketball season, but I guess presume there'll probably be no hope of our normal little recreation basketball. Rick?
No, it's too soon to say that, Pat.
Okay.
Right now with what the governor has outlined, we could do recreation basketball.
Okay. And is this what he outlined the last couple of days?
Correct.
Okay. Because I'm sorry, I did not read all of that, but okay. But now, Cammie, back to what you were talking about, your example, the $30,000 with the baseball. Go back over that for me again. I didn't quite understand that, the example you used.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Was just referring to any recreational activities where we may have shown them previously generating an income. We're showing them as not generating an income. So their revenue will equal their expense. So where previously we budgeted, say, the Peach Jam's another example, just to look at an event also. That was $100,000 in our budget we were using to balance the general fund, and that resulted in us having to go visit that budget adjustment. It was a large hit to the general fund. So I propose us going into 2021 with a no income Peach Jam. So we'll have Peach Jam revenue equals Peach Jam expense. If Peach Jam doesn't happen, we pull out both pieces and no impact to the general fund.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Cammie, and maybe I missed this because you're going through a lot of numbers there, but sum this all up. What is the net impact we're anticipating to the general fund in dollars and cents?
Same as your, as of today, early estimates, same as your current 2020 adjusted budget.
Right, which is how much less compared to our normal budgeting process?
So we would just be same from this point moving in. It would be the impact. Want to look at impact, you could compare that change that was our original 2020 budget to the adjusted. And that was $740,000.
And that 740 was over how many months though?
Say that again.
That 740 was for 6 months, or was that for 7? How many months was that 740?
That was adjustment for the year.
Right, but that adjustment though, I mean, obviously COVID didn't happen January 1, so presumably you would need to look at it almost on a pro rata basis, meaning if we reduced it $700K this year, presumably if we all things equal, it would be $800-900 million. It'd be some amount over $700K over the original 2020 budget. Am I looking at that wrong?
That adjustment was not prepared based on a monthly type analysis. So entire events were removed and adjustments were made on programs, but not necessarily a monthly income or expense adjustment. If that's helpful, it was an overall adjustment of a program or an event or a rental. So not something that you would divide that by 7 times by 12 to get your, not something like that.
But okay. Got it. But I guess the point is we would anticipate it being more than 700 considering an entire year. Is that a fair statement?
Well, just based on, that was just a $740,000 compared to our 2020 original budget. Moving in, try to get to your question. So like licenses and permits, for example, I'm talking 15% decreases in certain areas, some changes to permits, increase. Our permits are doing very well. So it averages out to be an 11% decrease in our business license and permits line item, that grouping of revenue, that revenue stream, but estimating an increase in taxes, and some increase in service charge for recreational programs based on the current performance that we've seen with the budget adjustment. Is that helpful?
Not really.
It's flat. It's a flat budget. So no major change in total moving into the new year.
I'm just trying to get a clear picture for myself, for council members and the public on what are we and staff, what are we going into this budget process looking like? Because I'm trying to, we all have our wants. Every council member, every department head has their list of wants, but there's the reality of how much money's there. And I'm just wondering, are we talking cutting a lot of discretionary spending? Or are we going to have to look at totally changing the way we look at certain things and or cutting expenses beyond what we did this year? Because that's kind of two different things in my mind. I think we can get by, it's one thing if we're looking at, hey, we're just going to have to tighten our belts for another year, and we're not going to be able to do the picnic shelters and those types of things. Or are we talking, hey guys, we're either looking at cutting payroll or raising taxes? Those are two totally different discussions in my mind. And I guess I'm just trying to get a feel at this, and maybe we're too early in the process to know that, but I'm just trying to get a feel. Are we talking that extreme of, hey, we're cutting people or raising taxes? Or are we just saying, hey, we're going to have to really lean up and be smart with our money, but we may be okay?
Fletcher, I think that, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to encourage you to go ahead and jump in.
I think I appreciate you laying it out that way, and I would look at it as just tightening our belt.
Okay.
If we're flat from where we are, we absolutely propose no personnel cuts whatsoever. And as you referred to, some of the projects that we would have maybe normally done, providing enhancements and new types of things, we may just not be able to do it this year, FY21.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
One of the things I also wanted to point out too, and we were talking about the decrease in revenue and how we adjusted our budget $740,000. Well, you are correct. COVID didn't, start in January for a variety of reasons. We had a number of unfilled positions that we've just maintained unfilled or we've delayed hiring. So it's more than just adjusting during the COVID time. We actually have gone back and looked at expenses since January. And since we knew early in March, we'd have some COVID expense related potential cuts, all departments were very conservative with their budget. So we will likely just have another conservative year in general.
Okay, Cammie, you confident you've covered it all so far? Rachel, do you have anything? What else would you like to add?
I think that we've covered everything. I wanted to utilize this opportunity to answer questions for you all. Anything that you all specifically wanted to know, anything you'd want to know more information on. We are very, very early in the process, as Cammie said, but we are at least able to have some sort of insight in what the next year is going to look like, revenue-wise.
Let me just add, we've yet to pay it, but we had the 2% raise this year, and that's getting closer to being put into people's paycheck. But we had 2% for 6 months budgeted. So now when we go 2% for the whole year, that's going to automatically necessitate about $150,000 increased personnel costs for next year. And Cammie, did you figure out what the impact of the retirement increase might be dollar-wise?
If they do it in July 1, upwards of 50,000+ for the general fund.
And they've delayed that this year, right?
That's correct, yes.
So this is one of those hypotheticals. We're trying to guess what will come out of Columbia. And if they implement the retirement increase, that's an additional 50,000 projected, which then brings us in personnel costs based on the total payroll of about 200,000. And that equates to about 2 mills. And so if I think Fletcher, in answer to your question, some of these things we've yet to flesh out and get more definitive answers. But we're, as always seems since I've been here at least, and you've been here longer, but we're always somewhat at the mercy of Columbia. They don't seem to care that we're on a calendar year schedule, and everybody else, most of the other people are on fiscal year schedules, July to end of June. So when they make a decision effective July, for us, that hits us at 6 months in. Most people, it doesn't hit them. They have the whole year. Any other questions?
I have one for Rachel. During this process, is someone on the city staff going to be looking at available grants? The municipal association has one that expires in September, and that's a $25,000 grant toward a master plan. I saw that the other day when I was reading the article. But I'm sure there are other grants in the state that can be applied for, whether we get them or not. But I just hope somebody is looking into that. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate saying that. We absolutely have. We've applied for public safety grants actually during the COVID period, as we were taking advantage of the CARES Act funding. So anything that can't be reimbursed through FEMA, and this of course refers to FY20 in order to recoup any COVID related costs. We have the CARES Act money as well as FEMA. Grants are coming through hot and heavy, although we're seeing a lot more loans coming through that are available to cities. I don't know that we're necessarily in a position or where it's necessary for us to take out any additional loans, but absolutely.
Well, and I think, Bob, specifically to the one you're talking about, I think I saw email traffic the other day that said, yes, in fact, we are applying for that.
That's correct. We've applied for that year over year. It's a
okay, well, we should have an inside track.
Highly competitive. Yes.
Rachel, if I can, you made a comment and I was thinking about it before you said it, is have we started getting money on the CARES Act stuff and just the whole COVID related government assistance to municipal government? And how does that potentially impact us for next year? Because I'm anticipating we made all the cuts we did with our budget adjustment, assuming we weren't going to get any money. But then if we get this money, that would presumably, I would think we could look at that as helping us out in 2021, or maybe I'm wrong there. Would you mind commenting on that?
Certainly. I know that we have been tracking and submitting for reimbursement. I don't know if to date we've received a reimbursement check. No. They run a little bit behind on that, and I know especially with FEMA, the 75% is what we should expect to receive from FEMA, and we are awaiting confirmation from the state that they will use the CARES Act money to provide us the remaining 25%. That money and the separate CARES Act money, that would all be revenue for FY20. And so it would likely be surplus. for this year, unless for whatever reason we need that surplus to cover any other operating expenses. But those would definitely be FY20 revenues. Now, I don't know, and JD is on here, and he may pipe up if he'd like. JD is managing the CARES Act reimbursement. I don't know if that will go into 21. I believe at this time it's related to expenditures through December 31st. That very well could change. It would require a change at the federal level, whether it's an extension of the act or it would be a new Appropriations Act.
Do we know ballpark? I mean, how much money are we talking about there? Do we know about how much we've applied for? Is this $100K? Is it $500,000? Is it $50K?
I wish it was that much. It's not, and this is all reimbursable money, I will say. So we're spending money out of our operating budget, and we'll just go ahead and get reimbursed. JD, I think you have the amount that we've applied for reimbursement. Here you go. Oh, we can't hear you.
You're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
That's weird. I can hear him through the wall because he's in the office next door. I believe it's about 15,000. Is that right? 15,000? Yeah. Our expenses have not been significant. Yeah.
He could get up and look over, come in and over your shoulder and add.
Yeah, he's welcome to do that. Yeah.
Get more creative with the accounting. That's a joke.
Yeah. Cammie is still on the staff, remember, Fletcher. Any other questions?
That seems like a very small amount. I'm just shocked that, wow.
Yeah, these are expenses directly related to prevention of COVID or responding to it. We haven't had the need, which I guess you could look at as a positive. We're not in a county that has a high rate of COVID cases, certainly not like Richland or Lexington or Charleston. So
I guess I say a small number, but I don't know exactly what everything would have qualified for reimbursement. So I guess I'm speaking out of turn a little bit. So.
No, I understand, and you would think that masks would cost a lot more, or hand sanitizer, but we're able to buy that at a very fair price. We actually just went out for bid for some heavy-duty sanitation services for a company to come through all of our public buildings periodically to sanitize, and I believe it's an airborne sanitizer. But even that, it's a few thousand here and there. I mean, so it's not as substantial as you would think. And we've also been very fortunate to receive supplies from our partners as well, whether it's through Aiken County EMD or the state, or donations from folks in the community.
Okay. We've got a couple minutes left, and let me just throw out something. We don't have to discuss it tonight, but I want to give you something to think about. Obviously, we're uncertain as to where we are right now in terms of what's going to happen next year, even for the rest of this year. As I mentioned, it looks like the impact of the raise this year and the retirement increase is likely to be about $200,000 in our budget next year. That's a direct impact, which equates to about 2 mills. Capital projects balance right now, I believe, is about 1.2 million. While that sounds like a hefty amount, we were down quite a bit some time ago. We got a fire truck planned in capital project sales tax 4. We don't know whether something else will come up in the fire truck arena. Public safety radios are coming up. That's 800,000. It looks like, I think Rachel told me you guys moved. Rachel indicated that that's lease purchase. That's 200,000, probably a year for, I'm guessing, about 4 years. We have the Country Club Park. It's not in the capital project sales tax now. It's sitting out there. So I don't know what your druthers are and what the thought process is, but we're going to wait for another 7 years before we do anything. Originally the property in Edgefield County was a ways from the city line, wasn't in the city. Now the Country Club Park is in the city. We don't have a plan for it as to how to develop it. I'm sorry. We have capital improvement plan, which is still being fleshed out to identify, money that's going to be needed in the near future. So where am I heading on this? I don't expect an answer, but think about, is there any interest in a millage increase? Maybe 2 mills. I knew Fletcher, we knew you would know when we started. So you and Kevin, we've discounted you already, but I know Bob would probably say yes. So, I know most of you already what would be, but think about it as a means of, if you want to populate the capital projects fund, not necessarily for general expenses, but as a means of building up our reserves for important and big expenses that are going to be in the near future. So just think about it. I did a quick calculation. It seems to me that's about, I think it was the same as last time, $12 on a $200,000 house in property taxes. So, just think about it. And we don't have to come back. We got 2 minutes before we need to go to the council meeting. So I just want to throw that out there. I knew there was 2 no head shakes immediately, but that's fine. I may get 1 or 2 nods. So, but think about it. That's all I'm asking. Just think about it, because we have uncertainties, and we have to. My big concern, frustration is we don't have a plan, for the future. We don't have things stepped out as to when they're going to be. So I'm trying to think about it. If you're comfortable with letting the Country Club property sit there for 7 years with nothing happening.
No.
Oh, okay. I'm not, this are hypotheticals. We need to, let's just adjourn this one. We don't have to come back. I just wanted to start getting your blood pressures up and have you thinking here at the end, but just think about it. And we're more than happy to answer any questions you have. So, Rachel, you ready to adjourn this meeting? Okay. This meeting's adjourned, and we'll reconvene in a very short period of time. Thank you. If you're not on, could I ask you to mute yourself? It helps with background noise. You're good, David. Okay, Ricky? Okay, thank you. I'd like to call this regular city council meeting to order. I'd ask you to stand if you're able for the invocation and the pledge. Dear God, we continue to be frightened, uncertain, fearful, and concerned with this virus that seems to be reinvigorating itself and spreading throughout our community. We ask that you be with the citizens of this city as they go about their daily activities, and ask that they do their best to protect themselves and to protect others. And the wearing of the mask seems to be the simplest and least impactful way on an individual. Our city businesses and citizens are struggling. We certainly would appreciate a comforting hand on them and on ourselves. We're approaching discussions of the 2021 budget under certainly as uncertain conditions as I've seen in probably the last 10 years that I've observed and been participating in the discussions. We have people that are out protecting our city daily, faced with who knows what threats to their well-being. We ask that you be with them and every city employee. And please, dear God, keep them safe. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let the roll show that Councilman Presnell is not present on this virtual city council meeting. All others are in attendance. Council, you've been provided study session and minutes of the regular meetings of July 20th, 2020. If there are no additions or corrections, they'll stand approved as provided. So noted. First, item number 5 is Resolution 2020-32 to authorize a memorandum of agreement with the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice to provide secure detention services for juveniles, that's persons under the age of 17, who are charged with committing crimes within the city of North Augusta. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So moved.
Mr. Dickert, do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Carpenter. Rachel, you want a brief discussion of this, or if you want Chief to do, it's up to you, either one of you.
I can be very brief. This is an annual agreement that the city has with the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice. They require this for all of their local governments. Essentially, any juvenile that has to be transported to DJJ by a North Augusta public safety officer, the city is required to cover the incarceration costs. And so this agreement just outlines requirement that we are required to cover those costs. We do this agreement every year, and it's the same that we did this time last year.
Basically the same, no changes to the provisions or anything?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Lamar, were there any comments from citizens?
Yes, sir. There was one comment. It was from Daryl Gilliland, and his comments read, do we currently use a juvenile detention center in Aiken for the county? And if so, isn't that sufficient?
Okay, thank you. Rachel, do you want to provide a little more background on it, or Chief too?
If Thomas is available, he can provide the best background.
Chief, do you want to clarify the answer to that question?
Sure. I just want to make sure you can hear me. Sharon, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. The Aiken County has a holding facility as we used to years ago. It's nothing more than a room where they can be detained before they're transported. So Aiken wouldn't help us. So again, I tell you, and I've alluded to and talked about it before, that we have a very low number of juveniles that are arrested. But if they're arrested for a crime, which is general session crime, or a crime which obviously would mean they have to be incarcerated, which is one that obviously rises to that level, then we would have to take them. We temporarily use a promissory note by the parents. We contact the parents. We try to work through that. So the numbers are very small, but this is an agreement that we have annually with DJJ. We use the one in Columbia because that's the closest one to us, and so that's obviously the one that we would use and utilize the most.
Thank you, Chief. You've used the word promissory note twice tonight, and can you just elaborate on that just for my own clarification?
Sure. What that means is when we contact the parents, obviously their child's been in some type of breaking the law within the city. So a promissory note is nothing more than we give them a court date and a family court date that they will have to appear. And so they know the child has been detained, technically been arrested, and so they have to show up on the court date that we give them through the promissory note, and that they'll take full custody of that child and have that child there on that court date.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that doesn't mean they are paying anything.
That's
Just
correct.
they'll bring the child. Okay.
That's right. That's for the court to decide, Ms. Carpenter. So all we're doing is turning that juvenile over to that parent again and making sure that they understand that in writing they have to have that child in that courtroom on that particular date and time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council or staff? Hearing none, proceed with the roll call vote. Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Excuse me. Yes.
Mr. Dickert?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Toole?
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. The resolution is adopted by a vote of 6-0 unanimously. Sorry, lost my agenda for a minute. Moving on to item number 6. This is a recommendation memorandum, Planning Commission recommendation memorandum number 20-021 and project staff report RZP 20-002, Article 4, supplemental use regulations, home occupations. This is provided for information by council. Rachel, do you want to just give a quick, I don't see that it's still on.
Libby's here. She's in hiding, but she can come out pretty quickly. But I'm happy to give a very brief overview. We've recently received a few applications for home occupations for folks to have a business that's related to food handling. So catering, preparing food out of their home. And our development code is unclear on whether we allow that. Thus, we are not able to allow that. So staff put together recommended change to the development code, which would allow for folks to have a food preparation type as a home occupation. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission and recommended for approval. Did I miss something? Laughing.
Libby was chasing a fruit fly or something, I think.
I have a nap. Sorry.
But the Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the text amendment.
Okay, and this, we can anticipate the ordinance revision to be presented at the next council meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I will take the opportunity to chide myself from past experience. And if I would ask that you read it, review it. If you have questions prior to our meeting next in 2 weeks, that you contact Libby or Rachel and get answers to our questions so that we'll be able to have an understanding of what it is, and if there's discussions to be held, that we can do it in full knowledge of what's been presented to us. So without objection, I would ask that the report be received by council as information, and it be so reflected in the minutes of this meeting. Seeing no objection, so ordered. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 7, administrative reports. Do we have any?
I have just a quick update about face coverings. The state Supreme Court has required now that face coverings be required in municipal courtrooms. So any visitor to our municipal courtroom here in North Augusta will be required to have a face covering. We do have disposable face coverings available on hand for anyone who is not able to provide their own or forgets their own. I'd also just anecdotally like to say I've been very impressed in the municipal building. Just about everybody I see who comes in to conduct business is wearing a face covering. So just a quick update on
that. Trying to talk without being muted. Now, Rachel, I didn't have a chance to look today. The governor again issued clarifications today. Did you mention that to me? On restaurant, my wife is the one who mentioned it. As far as wearing masks are required in restaurants until your drink is or food is served, and then once you depart the restaurant, you're required to wear it on exiting. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's correct. So previously, all of those things that you just referred to were suggestions from Accelerate SC that restaurateurs were to follow. Effective today, however, they are required to follow guidelines such as those, including limiting occupancy of patrons to 50% of the total capacity as well. Those requirements went into effect in order to help reduce the spread of COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we had the discussion, was it last meeting or the meeting before, about requiring masks in our public facilities. And I think we might want to give that some additional consideration again and look at it. The governor has seemingly required all local officials to enforce his executive orders, and it was quite dramatic and forceful in him making the point but he, for some reason, since I think he says one size does not fit all, has thus far resisted implementation of mask wearing requirements statewide. Seems a little bit of a dichotomy to me, but we're tracking with what he has thus far said, and we're trying to keep up with it as best we can.
I haven't looked at the reports lately, but do you have an update, Rachel, for what I guess our zip code has for cases and things like that? Or
I have not looked at our zip code recently. I know the past few days, the cases have been lower, still over 1,000 cases a day in our state. But I have not looked specifically for our zip code. I could do that right now.
Okay. While Rachel's looking that up, David, good question. It's obviously somewhat complicated with our zip code status and with many of our hospitalizations being across the river. But it's good to try and keep track of it. Let's move in to item number 8, because when Rachel finds the information, it'll fit very nicely in our comment period. Ms. Lamar, were there any citizen comments provided on topics of a general nature not included in our agenda?
No, sir, I have no other additional citizen comments for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, I've got it. Aiken County now has 1,505 confirmed cases. $29841 has 330 confirmed cases.
That was 29841.
Yes.
But now that zip code also includes Beach Island.
Right.
Yeah. Not necessarily North Augusta.
29860 is our other, correct? Yep. 137 cases.
So we're about 40% of Aiken County's total then? Is that, I forget, did you say?
Yeah, we've pretty much our zip codes have regularly comprised about that much of Aiken counties.
Okay.
would anybody have a clue to know if, since medical help is in Augusta mostly for us, and people go to Augusta, MCG and so forth, or whatever it's called now, is that, does anybody have a clue how that's translated? Considering if I'm sick, I'd go over to Augusta versus necessarily go to Aiken.
I don't know the exact details on that, but I do know that when you do get tested, you provide your home zip code. So even if you were to go to Augusta, or if you were to go to Edgefield County or Lexington County to get tested or frankly treatment, they report to your home zip code.
Good, thank you. Any other questions about the reporting? Any comments, general nature from council? Pat?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Rachel, the fire station update, anything exciting on that right now? Or the headquarters?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, I just met with Chief and Mark Costner last week, and I got some good updates. We plan on, before the end of the month, coming to council and sharing updated renderings with you all. We are on target with our project in terms of our timeline. Very happy to report that. When we come to you with fire station, what we will have is the updated site plan as well as the elevations. So now is the time where we pick our colors. Actually, spoiler, very happy to report we were able to move the building off of the property line just a little bit to hopefully make residents happy with that. And we were able to achieve the curved driveway that was requested by residents and you all. So we'll have that to show you coming up. And public safety headquarters, it's been quite a process to review and revise the layouts. All of public safety command staff has been really involved, and it's been a fun process, and they're really putting together something that's going to work for them now and in the long term. We've got the site layout finalized. I shouldn't say finalized. We've got a good site layout for that as well, and some really cool elevations. Wait to show you.
Okay. Now, any news made? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Rachel, what date did we tentatively say we were going to try and do that?
August 31st.
Okay.
August, okay, good. Now, Mayor or Rachel, any news on our mid payments? I mean, is that still just walking along like we?
You want to tackle it or do you want me to?
I'm happy to respond. We've stayed in communication with the property owners. They still have every intention of making the payment. We've not received yet, but we do stay in contact with them.
Okay.
And
I hate to ask, is there a reason they're not paying? I mean, if they don't pay, let's go on and do it. I mean, I hate to bring that up, but.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Pat. As I understand it, and Kelly may be able to help me, but the way and I don't know if it's an ordinance or what it is, but the way it's structured, once penalties are assessed for failure to pay your property taxes, there's no, they don't escalate over time. It's just a flat fee. Once it's assessed, it doesn't.
Yeah, basically, once they're delinquent and the late payment is applied, there is a period of time that is kind of a dead period, that if they pay on the first day of that, they pay the same amount of money as they do 120 days later. And so there's no savings to them under that. And the other thing that I think a lot of people have misunderstood, believing that with comments that the mid's not working, the mid is in process. It works just like regular taxes, property taxes. The event that pushes everything is the tax sale that takes place in November or December. And so under this, I mean, I can see the potential of someone saying, well, I can wait till the day before the tax sale and make the payment, and I pay the same amount of money as if I stepped up and paid it today. So I maybe earn something off of my money during that period of time. But the key to it is, when we really know whether the mid works or doesn't work, is at such time as we have if it's not paid and the tax sale takes place, somebody can buy the property at that time. And if they do, those funds then become available to the city. The owner would have the right for a year to come back and redeem the property, but that money then is paid and goes back to the person who purchased it with even greater interest. And so that's the situation that I think we're dealing with right now. There's no incentive other than public opinion to pay now rather than pay 2 days before the tax sale.
Oh, okay. Well,
and go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just, I mean, if it was my dad, I'd step up to the plate and pay it. But I'm not the person. So, and I know Kelly, but I do think, Kelly, what you said might help our citizens. I mean, that's, a little bit to know that the MID hopefully will work. So now I have a couple more questions, but these are very easy questions, Mayor. Are we going, I've been driving around taking pictures of some digital church signs, and who would I get that to, please? I didn't know if we're going to bring that up at the next meeting or down the road or about the church digital signs.
I suggest you send them to Rachel.
Rachel, okay. All righty, good. All right, and then
with Libby and
this is another, Rachel, our grant money, has anybody else applied lately for the grant? For the COVID grant?
We received 20 applications. Only 8 of them were eligible to receive.
Okay.
Grant letters were mailed to all of them. It's a reimbursable grant. And so they have to return the signed grant agreement and their proofs of purchase, and they'll receive reimbursement based on that.
Okay, thank you. And in answer to Pat and Kelly's comment, I think that's something that we've had initial discussions on looking at that in terms of how penalties are structured, just to avoid this kind of a situation. Maybe nothing ultimately can be done, but I think we're going to be looking at it, because in our situation, it certainly just leaves it hanging a little bit. But,
I just don't want our citizens to feel we're just sitting around doing nothing about it. We understand and we're trying, and so, like I said, I know things are confidential, but I also know these are taxpayers too, and their money.
and as Rachel said, we've had multiple conversations, and of course, facing the reality of what Kelly's pointed out to us. But I appreciate.
I hope that the public understood Mr. Kelly's explanation. But as a business person, your taxes are due at a certain time, but sometimes you need to levy that time to your advantage, and this may be a case. I'm not necessarily defending them, but there's still lots of time for them to handle their debts associated with this property. And I don't think we are necessarily, in my opinion, at a panic mode just yet. But I can't speak for the owner. I'm just under that impression and understanding of how the taxes go and the penalties. They have to be paid eventually.
Okay, thank you. Fletcher, you're unmuted there.
Yeah, and I'd like to add, I guess the MID is one component of that. As we all know, there's a lot of different revenue streams as it relates to the debt associated with Riverside Village. And Cammie's comments regarding hospitality tax funds being down, all of those are of course things that we need to watch closely. And I'm sure Cammie's and Rachel and Mayor, I'm sure y'all are looking at those, but we need to, we may need to have some special meeting or some further discussions, forecasting, updating, something looking at, what the long-term implications of this could be. And then also just a comment, that the MID, as we all know, the MID was our backstop for this, because that's the largest component or the largest revenue stream. But as we all know, the MID is likely only going to work for a few tax cycles. How likely is someone going to pay those high tax amounts on an undeveloped property? So we know the biggest, as Walter Goldsmith pointed out numerous times, the biggest risk is development not happening. If development happens, we're in good shape. So I'm hopeful that staff is pursuing that component almost more fervently than we are the payment, because I'm more concerned that if we're not seeing plans coming in and construction is not going to be starting in the next year, how likely is someone to pay 2 mid payments or 3 mid payments? We can probably get by off of 1 mid payment being missed or something of that nature, but the long-term implications of not having development there that really guarantees property tax revenue, I think is the bigger risk here that we need to look at. So, I guess I know one thing that I was excited about with Jim Clifford joining us is hopefully some of his contacts as it relates to some cyber related stuff. But I hope that is a top priority of us trying to help, even though we're not in the business development world. Hopefully we are trying to help the property owners in finding solutions such that we get development, even if it's maybe not exactly what was originally planned.
Well, you were absolutely correct in your statement that Cammie, Rachel, and I spend a lot of time in discussions related to the mid payment and what can be done future, because you're absolutely correct. Walter repeatedly said, the mid really is there to encourage development. I mean, the developer has no chance not to make a mid payment, because if he doesn't make the mid payment, he doesn't own the property. So, it's not like he gets any delay. And yes, we're working we're having multitude of discussions to try and figure out where we are, what's really happening, what options, there's talk about the senior living and what ultimately will it be that or not? Will it be apartments or, a number of things, but there's always issues, as you all know better than I do, with the development down there in terms of this and that and the other thing, because it's a tight development. Rachel, you've jumped in, so go ahead, I'll shut up.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit. I didn't hear what you said. Oh, sorry, you were muted.
You're right. I'll slow down.
I think you were just asking for me to follow up on what you said, and you're right. We just had a call with them last week. We were able to get some tentative guidelines, or timelines for some of the upcoming projects. But I agree with you completely. We most definitely relay to them that we want to see the progress. It's not about the mid payment; it's about seeing the progress. And so, I could not agree with you more, Fletcher.
I would say that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to add that, there's quite a few things that the city and community here in North Augusta can do to support that. I mean, I know that we've had our hands tied with health restrictions and COVID and things like that. But as we participate in the community and spend money and do things in the area, that encourages our economic development, and that fuels the fire for them to be able to make moves and get things started, and people understanding that that there will be traffic here and there's a desire to be here, and all those things that we have to increase as a community and support of the city in this endeavor. I don't like the thought process that is the city doing their part to develop property. Yes, I believe the city is doing their part, but the community also has to do part of that too. So, the developer is looking at what they can get accomplished and in what time frames they can do. And I know that they've had a lot of challenges getting to this point. There's no doubt about it. Should they have been further along? Absolutely. But I don't want to discourage the plans that they have in place. I want to make sure that we understand as a community. I know this party, most of the people in this group understands it, but we want to encourage them to proceed. And I don't like the negativity of, that lack of payment on the mid and lack of payment of taxes. So I understand that. It's a concern. But they also have, they're trying to move forward amongst all these situations. And I think we need to be positive to encourage that. And I try to do that in the community as best I can. I know there's a fear. There's no doubt there's a fear that this is going to be could turn into something awful for the city. But I have faith that this is going to move forward, and that, the developers are going to get to where they need to be to put the city whole again, once again, with that development commitment. And I believe that that's going to be the case. How many darts have been thrown, and then how many waves have we seen, especially with the most recent one with COVID and everything, that have, pushed things off. And, no excuses, but there's lots of reasons why we're here where we are. And I just want to continue to encourage the developer and the people on the staff, city staff and council and mayor and everybody throughout the community, chamber, all the people that support us as a whole. That's what we do. And remind everybody once again that one big thing that you can do is do your census. Get your census information in. That helps also when they start looking at demographics and who lives here and income and households. All that information fuels our economic development. And I know I'm telling y'all as a group, and y'all understand this, but I just want the community to understand that there's a lot of factors. And, it's not the city that brings in a restaurant. It's the community that brings in a restaurant. It's the economic development that brings in restaurants. And the quality and the style and the size, all that is developed. It comes from data that they collect. It's not I want a restaurant. I want this. It's a lot more to it. And sometimes I feel that the community makes comments that don't really understand that, and it's sometimes it can be a little frustrating. But as a community, we have to continue to move forward. That's all.
Thank
Well,
you.
David, I agree. I'm for development. My goodness, I'm for it. And that's why we're sitting down there with the ball stadium right now. But like I said, I think a lot of times if people understand, and Kelly has done a wonderful job explaining, and I think that's what citizens need to hear. A lot of times if it's just us hearing it or 2 or 3 on council hearing something and the rest of us don't, then we all need to know. And what Kelly said tonight, I think will help our people, our citizens understand. And like I said, no, I am for development. Now, one more little question and I'll quit. But I know years ago, sometimes like Sam Bennett, and then when Todd came aboard, Rachel too, do we contact restaurants and business? Do we have somebody specific that, and I know we make fun with Cracker Barrel with the fireplace and all that, but do we actually contact businesses ourselves as a city, or we just sort of let them come to us and say we'd like to move in?
It's a combination of both. Some cities have personnel who are 100% solely devoted to that. That's all they do. We don't have such a staff person, but administrator folks reach out to the planning director all the time. There's a variety of directors who have contacts with folks in the community that help to make connections or make suggestions. Absolutely.
And yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, I'm in discussions not as frequently as Libby and Rachel, but I have developers, and quite honestly, you know, there always seems to be something that may or may not make sense to a developer coming in, and almost seems like an impediment. And, you know, we work hard over time to figure out what they are and a way to get things done. Yeah, you know, that's the reality. And of course, everything's in a turmoil now, except for the construction guys. I guess they're going crazy, which is a good thing. But in answer to your question, we don't have a Todd Glover sitting here, but we have multiple people, and people are contacting Rachel, I would guess, every couple of weeks with a potential development idea. Whether it's property or restaurants or any number of different things.
Well,
A lot of talk and sometimes not a lot of action.
I know myself, every time I go somewhere, I make a point to get to the manager. Or, you know, and I know a lot of times the managers have nothing to do with it, but just spreading the word, North Augusta's ready.
If I go someplace to a restaurant that I just think is fantastic, especially if it's a chain, I ask them, do you have anything in the CSRA? Would you like to?
Yeah, that's right, Rachel. Me too. Me too.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, let me just make a statement and an announcement, an informational thing. We've got a virtual study session, a special called study session scheduled for next Monday night, August 10th at 6 p.m. And that's the time. Two things will happen, both somewhat related. Council will receive for information, the Calhoun Park Committee presentation, which will be a PowerPoint and the report. And then also I anticipate a general discussion of the South Carolina Attorney General's opinion related to the Meriwether Monument. We asked a question about, does the Heritage Act apply? But we're going to have a discussion, council involved in discussion on what's our path forward, what's our approach that we're going to do. Kelly and I've had a number of discussions, and he's got some appropriate thoughts on how we ought to proceed. And I presume all of you have a copy of that. Did we? Okay. Excuse me. I just want to remind everybody and those who might be watching that, you know, the study session, this next one, as all study sessions are council work sessions where we receive information and where we discuss items and information. I think these are important enough for hearing council input, since it is for receiving information and discussing topics that citizen comments will not be included, and particularly it'll be virtual, so it'll be very inconvenient to be able to do it. And I just, as you know, no decisions will be made about either of the two topics that night. And I anticipate resolution or ordinance or whatever else, but some item will come before council, at some later date for a decision. And at that time, we will make every effort to make certain that, because these are topics that are of interest to a large number of people now, that they'll be able to have discussions. So I can tell you the committee's been in discussions. They had multiple viewpoints on whether or not the committee report should be delayed. I'm of the opinion, and I'm going to call the Attorney General's opinion stands by itself. The committee's report stands by itself. They're related. But I think as mayor, I'm going to call for the committee to present its report then and cut the discussion off. I'm sorry. I apologize. I've got 2 or 3 frogs in my throat. This rain, I guess. And that's all I have for tonight. Any other last thoughts?
Well, I'm gonna tell y'all, it has been raining solid for the last 20 minutes still. So Chief Thomas and Rach, you might look out for some flooding in North Augusta.
That's been
I thought you were concerned about me getting to my car.
Oh, yes, yeah. Boy, this is what, well, I'm sorry, Mayor, you at the building, aren't you? We all home.
Rachel's here. It looks
Yeah,
like
y'all get the mayor to the car now, please.
your office, Fletcher. Yeah, so he's got, I mean, there's a number of us that are, that you should have been concerned about, but I'm sure you were.
I am concerned about everybody.
I knew it. You're Miss Pat of North Augusta. I mean, that's all. That's all you need to say. And everybody in the
listen,
city,
you remember, Mayor, the crack of the bat, boy.
And the pop of the glove. Isn't that what you told me?
That's right. The pop of the glove and crack of the bat.
Okay. Any other thoughts? If not, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Bye.